Well, it's time now for the press review. Solange Moujon, our press reviewer, is here with us. Solange, you're starting us off with the rising death toll in both Turkey and Syria. How are regional papers covering the aftermath of that earthquake?
Well, for the Turkish paper, Turkey, life has become, it says, like an apocalypse. Similar to an apocalypse, it says this image of crumbling buildings. Well, it's making front pages around the globe. Others like it as well, of people being torn from the rubble. For Al-Watan, what has happened in Syria and in Turkey is, for the paper, a tragedy with Assad's regime asking for aid, international help. Now, for the Middle East Eye, it says that those that are stuck in the rubble, well, they now face a risk of hypothermia, with snow and rain and freezing temperatures, adding even more challenges for rescue teams on the ground.
What about opinion writers, Solange? What have they had to say about the earthquake?
Well, the death toll may be more than just a natural disaster. That's the view of an opinion writer in the Washington Post, who writes that, quote, Today is a day of rescue and mourning, not finger pointing. However, the writer then goes on to argue that Turkey's reliance on construction-driven economy, on cronyism, and on ignoring safety standards, well, they could also be to blame, and that the Turkish people deserve an inquiry. But as Al-Monitor says, in the coming days, we will see how, according to it, how adept Recep Tayyip Erdogan is at turning adversity to his own advantage. Nonetheless, as with the quake in 1999, questions about building codes and unprecedented corruption within his party, they will grow, according to the paper. Now, cartoonists are also taking stock of the tragedy. As we see here in Vasco Gargalo's cartoon, we have a seismograph that is measuring the crumbling national flag. And finally, in El Arabi Al Jadid, their cartoon also has the Turkish crescent. It's crying here, and a cracked ground in the shape of bodies.
We'll change gears now. Solange, you found a few articles about migration.
Yeah, NPR today has a stunning, absolutely beautiful article. It's an interactive piece about how climate change, the rising sea levels in Senegal, but also overfishing, how they have pushed migrants to head to Europe, which then in turn boosts, as the article explains, the far right within Europe. It is a worthwhile read as it traces one man's journey from being a farmer and fisherman in Senegal to now his role in the Spanish National Assembly. Now, also in regard to migration, The Guardian tells us that conservatives in the UK are considering leaving the EU Convention of Human Rights. The Guardian says that this would be a highly controversial step, one that would be challengeable in courts, but also in the House of Lords, as it could potentially infringe on the right of law in the UK, not to mention create backlash on the left, but also within the Tory party. But for the conservative paper, The Spectator, the Prime Minister is right to consider such a step, stepping out of the Human Rights Convention. It argues that the treaty is flawed and that parliaments should reign supreme, not human rights conventions.
The American press, meanwhile, Solange, is also discussing, even still, reactions to Sunday's Grammy Awards.
Yeah, the controversies keep turning in the U.S. press. The Los Angeles Times says that the ceremony was a spinning gramophone. It celebrates Beyoncé's breaking the record for most wins, but it notes that there were some surprises, that she didn't receive Best Album or Song of the Year, those being passed on to Bonnie Raitt and also to Harry Styles. Now, Styles' acceptance speech is also spilling a lot of ink as it sparked a debate over white privilege, but because he said, quote, "This doesn't happen to me, people like me, very often." But the debate that's gaining traction politically, or at least putting the Christian right in a meltdown, is, as Vice puts it, the performance and win by non-binary Sam Smith and the trans singer Kim Petras. Now, they won the award for their song Unholy, both a first for a trans and non-binary person at the Grammys. But as Business Insider tells us, Ted Cruz found the Grammys to be evil because of the duo's Satan-themed duet with Cruz and other conservative evangelists voicing their disapproval of LGBTQ plus rights and rallying together over these culture war themes. Now, trans rights are also in the press today in regard to a Harry Potter video game. Rolling Stone hails that the first trans character will be in a new Harry Potter video game this is a first in the wizarding world, and it's likely in response to J.K. Rowling's string of anti-trans comments, a way for the franchise potentially to distance itself from that controversy.
Finally from you, Solange, then, scientists are now tackling the age-old question of what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah, and I have answers for you. And they are more nuanced than you think. Live Science explains that researchers have actually been tackling this. It is not a joke. And that they found that when it comes to birds, well, eggs come first. That the first bird fossils date back to around 150 to 165 million years ago. But that the first shelled egg dates back even further to some 325 million years ago. But as promised, here is the nuance. Because if we're talking about chickens in particular, the article explains that the chickens are thought to be a mutation of another bird, a guinea fowl. So the mutation was actually in one of its eggs. So in this case, the chicken came first.
Sounds like the response to that rhetorical question then, Solange, can now be both, depending on which types of species or eggs you're looking at. It's noted. Solange Moujon, thank you very much.